The Siberian Husky had started following the wrong person. It took a cardiologist to explain why. Lyra had always been Jonah's dog. That was the arrangement. Settled in the first week they brought her home, before the baby existed, before any of this. Jonah was hers and she was his, and the rest of the family could participate on a visitor basis. She slept at the foot of his side of the bed. She followed him to the kitchen and back. When he came home, she announced it to the entire neighborhood. When he left, she slept at the door. For 4 years, this had been the absolute geography of her loyalty. Toddler Mia arrived and changed some things, but not that. Lyra studied Mia with professional curiosity and concluded, apparently, that the small, loud human was interesting and worth protecting from a respectful distance. But when Jonah walked in a room, Lyra still moved from wherever she was to be beside him. The arrangement had simply expanded to include a secondary post. In November it changed. Jonah noticed first. He came home on a Thursday, and Lyra came to the door and greeted him, and then, instead of following him to the kitchen the way she had for 4 years, she turned and went back to the living room, where his wife, Sarah, was sitting with Mia. He called her back. She came, and he scratched her ears, and she looked at him and went back to the living room. He mentioned it at dinner. Sarah hadn't noticed anything different. Lyra was under her chair. By the second week of November, Jonah had cataloged it without meaning to. Every time Sarah sat down, Lyra was beside her. Every time Sarah got up, Lyra moved with her. In the kitchen, at the sink, on the stairs, in the hallway. Not Mia. Not Jonah. Sarah. And not the happy following of a dog who wants attention. The focused, economical following of an animal that has found something requiring monitoring. Referred Sarah thought it was sweet. She told her mother, who agreed it was sweet. Jonah told his brother, who said, "Huskies are moody, they go through phases," on the 3rd week. Lyra started doing something new. She would press her nose to Sarah's left arm specifically, the inside of the wrist, the crook of the elbow. She would hold the position for 10-15 seconds, inhaling. Then she would sit back and look at Sarah and do it again. Sarah's left arm. Nothing else. Every time. Jonah looked at this on a Wednesday evening and felt something that he did not yet have a name for. He said, "Does your left arm feel okay?" Sarah said it felt fine. He said, "Does anything feel different?" She thought. She said, "I've been more tired, but I have a toddler." Jonah looked at Lyra's nose against Sarah's wrist. She said, "I had some palpitations last week. Nothing major. I figured it was coffee." He made the appointment himself. Family doctor first, who did an EKG and referred immediately to cardiology. Dr. Nadia Ferreira, cardiologist, reviewed the results and sat across from both of them and explained that Sarah had an undetected arrhythmia, a specific pattern of irregular rhythm that was at present intermittent and manageable, and that had been producing physiological changes consistent with what dogs with documented cardiac sensitivity had been known to respond to. Subtle changes in skin chemistry, in perspiration, in the electrical adjacent metabolic compounds that accompany abnormal cardiac events. She looked at her notes. She asked how long the dog had been behaving differently. Jonah told her, 3 weeks. She calculated backward. That corresponds to when your rhythm irregularity appears to have begun based on your Holter monitoring. She looked at them both. Your dog found this before we did. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next. 1. Sarah's condition was manageable with medication and monitoring. The arrhythmia was not immediately life-threatening, but Dr. Ferreira was precise in her language. Untreated and undetected, it would have become something they could not manage as easily. The window in which intervention is straightforward, she said, is exactly where you are now. She closed the chart. You are here because a dog spent 3 weeks pressing its nose to a specific place on your wife's arm. She paused. I have only read about this. I have not seen it in my practice until today. Has your dog ever started following a specific person in your family differently? For no reason you could identify? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Sarah has been on medication for 4 months. Her rhythm has been stable. She goes to cardiology every 6 weeks. Lyra goes back to monitoring Jonah. That is the arrangement. Restored. The 4 years of settled geography reclaiming itself. But she checks on Sarah in the evenings. She will come to the living room and press her nose to the inside of Sarah's wrist for a few seconds, reading what is there, and then she will go back to Jonah's side. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never ask for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The numbers are good. The rhythm holds. Lyra checks anyway. That is her report. Everything is fine. I already looked, but I am going to keep looking because that is what I do. Because this is what I am. Because you are mine, and I will not stop watching over what is mine for as long as I am able to read the air that surrounds you. She presses her nose to the wrist. She inhales. She lifts her head. She goes back to her post. Mia is 2.5 now. She has learned to hold Lyra's face in both small hands and look directly into the pale blue eyes the way children look at things that belong entirely to the world of wonder. Lyra accepts this with the patience of a dog who has learned that children are earnest and that earnestness deserves to be met with stillness. And then Mia lets go, and Lyra goes to Jonah's side. And on her way, she passes Sarah, and her nose drops briefly to the wrist and rises. And she continues. The check takes less than a second. It always will. She has been doing it since November. She will do it for the rest of her life. In the same way that Jonah locks the front door every night without thinking about it. Not because anything has gone wrong recently, but because he's the kind of person who checks, and she is the kind of dog who never stops.